Good afternoon, Dauphin and Delaware County, and your municipalities and other applicants. It's 2:01, so it's time to start the 2 o'clock brief. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for attending. I am Chris Evans with Pennsylvania Emergency Management. I'll be your facilitator today for about the next hour and a half. We'll go through pretty much the whole program. Could take about an hour and a half. Probably get your questions answered as we go along. At the end, we will have a question and answer period. Okay. Also, as we go through slides, if you have a particular question on that slide, I've got one of my project specialists is on the chat room, and you can go ahead and use the chat room for any questions you have on that particular slide. If we haven't answered any other of your questions by the end, again, in the chat room, we will address and answer all questions at the end also. Hopefully you have the slides there in front of you for the brief. If you've peeked ahead, there are quite a few pages there, quite a few slides. Not to worry, I am not a slide reader. You have the slides in front of you. They're there for your reference and future use to go back to as you get to particular portions of this operation and stages. You also are going to have a project specialist assigned to you. We'll get to that at the end, who that is for Dauphin and who Delaware has. They're going to be your primary points of contact from the start until the end. They're your Fema, Pennsylvania project specialist. You will also get a Fema one assigned to you eventually at one point, and we'll talk about that today as we go through. As we go through this process today, if you find that it's going to take a lot more of your attention than you're able to do, as you'll see, this is a very active participation program. If you find that you're going to be delegating down to another person, that's fine. It happens all the time. We just need to make sure that person you delegate to gets to either our next brief, which is tomorrow at 10, or we are also recording this brief and we'll have it up on our website for viewing in the future. Because we'll have some of you that are participating now, we'll talk about life happens, change jobs, and you'll be somebody come in to replace you, and they'll need to watch the brief in the future so they understand the program. So the PA, public assistance process, we're at the briefing. All these steps we will touch on today. Again, a lot of slides, I'll just touch on the finer points. Some of the slides will all have fine points to them we need to talk about. Others I'll breeze through and mention that it's here for your reference. The objectives, give again, high-level view. As we'll talk towards the end, you will eventually get scheduled with your own personal sit-down call, Zoom meeting with your Fema and eventually your Fema rep to get into the details of your claim, the projects you have, the work you're doing, the work you have to do, and then that work obviously generates what it's going to cost you. So again, we're doing just good brief today to give you information, to make you start thinking about some things. So when I get to those slides where, okay, this is one of those things you've got to start thinking about. Does it affect you? Does it entice you? Or are you totally repulsed by it? Then you'll know when it comes to the meeting. But so we'll touch, these objectives, we'll touch each of these here. So if you've been with us in previous disasters or not, FEMA gives us a 4-digit designation for the disaster. The 4618 is Pennsylvania's unique 4-digit FEMA ID for the declaration. If you remember back, Irene and Lee were 4025, 4030. If you were there with us for that, 4506 is COVID. If you were with us on the COVID emergency protective measure reimbursement. So we had Storm Ida on the 1st and 2nd of September. High water stayed up through the 5th. So we have an incident period here listed is where your damages by Ida had to occur or costs had to have been incurred. You may have work completed, great. You may have work still to be completed, needs to be spec'd out, needs to be bid out, needs a contractor. That's fine, not an issue. But that work that you have to be completed was caused during this incident period. So for today, should only be applicants looking to participate in this program from Dauphin and Delaware. We do have 10 other counties designated for this. The information for the counties is all the same, but we have 3 groups of when they were designated. So that designation date then drives a different date for you, and it's mainly on getting the RPA in, which we're going to talk about, the request for public assistance. But other than that, all of the other information. If you're from a different county, welcome to continue to attend, but you'll need to look at the slides for your county for those particular dates for your county. So the request for public assistance, we'll talk about it a few times today. There'll be other topics we'll touch on a couple of times, reoccurring themes, as I'll call them, because they are items that are of importance, the dates of importance, or the topic we'll be discussing are things we have found in the past, with this being my 22nd federal public assistance declaration. We've taken reoccurring themes where applicants have gotten sideways, backwards, and upside down with the program. So our job as FEMA and your advocate and our responsibility to administer this program for FEMA is to keep you from getting backwards, upside down. So you'll see some reoccurring things. But your first federal document, so this is your first meeting on the program, and it's a required. Your first required federal form is the Request for Public Assistance, RPA. If you were with us in previous old ones, besides COVID, that was a paper. We were out doing these briefings in person. We handed out the paper in your packet. You filled it in at the brief. We collected it up at the brief and checked it, and then opened the doors for people to leave. Now we all work within FEMA's online portal system. We'll be talking about that at the end of the presentation on a little more what it is and how you get in. If you were with us with COVID-19 declaration reimbursement, you already have access to the portal and you're familiar with it. There'll be a couple of slides pertaining to you on that, on how you navigate in the portal to get to submitting this request. Again, it's only asking for 2 contacts, primary contact, alternate contact, and all the contact information. And again, identifying who you are. We'll get into a little more detail here a little bit on applicants, but the big thing, again, you'll see it reoccurring, is the due date, November 19th. So the other 10 counties that were designated earlier than you. So if you're in one of those and listening, your date is earlier than the 19th because you have 30 days from your declaration. So what does the program do? It provides funding, most part reimbursed funding, to the eligible applicants, which we'll describe here in a little bit, for the emergency work and permanent restorations they need to do because of Ida. The good news on this slide is you will be reimbursed for 100% of your eligible costs to damages cost incurred because of Ida. FEMA will be putting up 75%, and the Commonwealth will be putting up to the 25% or whatever is needed to make you whole. And we'll describe where it may be less than 25% in future slides. So we'll touch all four of these, but as long as you are good to go in all four categories, you're going to be an eligible applicant with facilities and work in the designated county. Cost also, we have the minimum $3,320 is FEMA's minimum value of a project. So you must have at least $3,320 in cost damages. Do not let that scare you off yet, please. Stay with us, go through the program here, go through the RPA, come to your first meeting with us. Let's sit down and talk about your damages. In the past, we have been able to find other eligible damages. There's been a few times where we weren't. A lot of times it's the fire departments that struggle to meet this threshold. Eligible applicants, first four are pretty self-explanatory. For the authorities, if you are a department of a municipality, then you will fall under that municipality's claim. If you are your own separate political subdivision taxing authority, then you will come in as your own separate applicant, just like you're a separate entity, totally separate from the municipality. Private nonprofits, we're going to talk about them for here a little bit. They're for FEMA, classifies them as critical and non-critical, which we'll get into. But your ability in doing the RPA, there's a little more paperwork involved, documents needed within the FEMA portal, things you'll have to upload. And as we're finding out now, the portal is that you need to have the documents on hand, ready to upload when you go in to start your profile if you have not been in there before, if it's the first time. Again, we'll have slides how you do that here near the end. But all the documents it's requesting, you'll need to have on hand to upload. If you stop and go back, eventually it'll time out and not save anything. So it's things like your 501c3, your charter, proof of ownership. I'd say the 501c3, but maybe you have the old Pennsylvania Department of Treasury tax exempt certificate. That'll work too. Your charter, proof of ownership, documents in there, and insurance. Some eligibility on the PNPs, third bullet. These four that are listed are your critical private nonprofits. All the services you provide are essential, but FEMA, the program, separates them into critical, which are the educational, utility, emergency services, like your EMS and your volunteer fire companies. So if you're a municipality and you have a volunteer fire company out doing emergency work, protective measures, during the storm, blocking things off, making water rescues, or pumping out basements afterwards, please ensure that that department knows of this program and files a claim. They have some equipment costs, they have some material costs, maybe the facility engine house was damaged, things we want to talk about with them. And then you have your medical private nonprofit institutions. The other ones, so you have their critical. So your critical PNPs can come to FEMA for all of your claims. Whether you're doing emergency work, debris, or like most of them that I have talked to had damages to their facility. If you are a critical service, you do the RPA and come right into the system with FEMA for all of your claims. If you are considered under FEMA's rules, under the program, a non-critical private nonprofit, still providing essential services, but they consider you non-critical, and they're listed here at the bottom. So if you had debris removal and emergency protective measures, and we'll get into what each of those entail here in a little bit, those costs, cleaning out your facility, maybe you move things with the storm coming, you knew you were going to have high water, so you took emergency protective measures to move equipment out of the flood zone, floodway, you move things to the second, third floor, whatever you did to protect things from being damaged. Those costs you can come directly to FEMA for. But if you're a non-critical, listed on the bottom here, and you had damage to your structure, damage to your facility, you have permanent work that has to be completed, and we'll get into that types of those things here in another couple of slides. That permanent work, you are required first to go to the SBA, Disaster Loan Program, to apply and see if you qualify for any SBA funding. Could be full funding they could give you, maybe partial. Or, seeing you have no source of income, you apply to the SBA and they have a variety of paperwork for you to fill out as a private nonprofit. Packet they'll send you after you apply. But then, lo and behold, they deny you for your loan. Don't be discouraged. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, being denied for the loan. That means you can come back to FEMA with that letter of denial they will give you for your permanent restorations. I've talked to a few of you already on this. If you have a DRC open in your county still, you can go there to the SBA, or you can just go to their website and pick Pennsylvania, Ida, your county, and move through the application process that way too. We still want you to do the RPA and do all that part. If you're new and don't have a presence in the portal, we wanted you to go in and do your profile, get your SBA document or your PNP documents in, get to the RPA so you can turn that in. That's a little more lengthy process for private nonprofits. All those documents then have to be reviewed by FEMA to ensure that you are a eligible private nonprofit. And then they will start discussing projects with you and get people assigned to you. So it's kind of parallel tracks. You want to be doing the RPA process, and you want to be, if it's relevant to your damages, permanent repair, you want to get to the SBA and be doing that loan application also. So we have the designated counties. We've determined the eligible applicants, and now the eligible applicant needs to have an eligible facility as listed here. Again, for your reference, that would be your building you own, the road, the culverts, the bridges, all those type of things. Water treatment plants, sewer treatment plants, all those eligible. So you have your facility that was damaged. So the work, and we'll talk about different types of work and all throughout the program, but then the work that is required to that facility to return it back to its pre-event condition and use. And we'll see the fourth bullet here. We talk about permits, procurement, codes and standards. If you're in the waterway, you need a DEP permit. You are replacing a pipe or a bridge and you need a hydrology report done by the engineer, and that then drives your permit with DEP. You want to make sure you're doing all these things prior to work. And you'll have this permits, procurement, and codes you'll see is one of those reoccurring themes we'll have today. Documents in the email the county sent out had attachments which talked about procurement, codes and standards, and we'll get into them a little more deeper later on. So you've seen me, we've talked about emergency work and permanent work. Here's where they're described. FEMA categorizes each type of work. For you, it's going to be just worry about naming what it is as you have our discussions with us. FEMA and PEMA in your project worksheet, which we'll talk about later, we'll get into putting it into the right category. Each type of work has its own nuance as to time restraints and or how things are done, whether there's permits obviously involved, whether there's going to be obviously insurance involved. So it's a way of categorizing things and putting things into the right cart, making sure all the apples and apples are together and the oranges and oranges are together. Also, you have time constraints, as you can see here for your emergency work, which is your debris removal. And those emergency protective measures, which your fire or police may have been doing or you were doing yourself to protect property from being damaged, all that work has to be done by April 8th. Obviously, Category B work is done, but you may have still some debris. You might still have a culvert clogged up. You might still have some debris under a bridge. All of that work must be completed by April 8th, 2022. These dates are relevant to all 12 counties that are declared. And you have your permanent work. Pretty self-explanatory what falls in. Again, don't worry about matching up that roads are Category C, utilities are Category F. It's not part of the quiz at the end. Again, something FEMA will worry about, and you actually will get auto-populated into your projects. Just as you come forward and you're talking about all your different damages that you had, costs incurred, just worry about what it was. You had damage to your building, your equipment was damaged, you got 3 bridges destroyed, and a couple road washouts. The last one, Cat Z, your administrative costs. We'll get into that later on in another slide. So your costs. Costs are driven by the work that was required to repair or replace the facility back to its pre-event status. So we talk here, have the approved scope of work. This is part of the interactive participation we have, as you will be, and we'll talk about this a few times, the scope of work and its importance, but it's that scope of work is what's going to describe what is needed, what is the process, what are the pieces of the puzzle to put that facility back to its pre-event status. Throughout the brief today, we're going to use for simplicity as a 1-lane bridge you had. Bridge was destroyed. So what is that scope of work required to put it back to the way it was? Again, within the costs, you may be contracting out, which we'll talk about. So how did you procure that contractor? And again, permits. So you may have done work, the work you've done and the work you need to still do, you're doing in-house. You're using your own employees to do the repairs and replacement. They're considered in the program your force account labor. So this is a good reference if you've already have work completed and you need to start pulling together the documents to support the costs that you're doing, that you're going to be submitting. You can start seeing us using this by the type of work, category A debris removal, down through the permanent work, fixing the roads, is what time for your employee is eligible for you to submit. Again, things for you to start pulling things together, putting, first start with what work do you have completed and what work do you have to be completed. And then you can start worrying about, okay, well, this was debris removal I completed, here's some road work I have completed, and here's road work I still need to complete. Again, in the meeting we have with you down the road, we can get into this more in detail, but it's just a good reference so you can start pulling together the documents, whether it's spreadsheets, timesheets, things like that. So you had your in-house labor out fixing roads and your bridges. They're also using your equipment. You have applicant-owned equipment. FEMA has an equipment rate for that, which is all-inclusive. So we don't have to worry about fuel and everything listed here. The rate listed in the FEMA equipment rates, and there's many of them in there. You might be familiar. Back in the snowstorms, we used them for your plows, spreader, truck. But there's loaders, grade-alls, dump trucks, all in there, separated by horsepower or bucket load. The FEMA equipment rates are available within the portal once you get there under the resource tab, and also on our FEMA website under recovery, public assistance, and the forms library. Again, something that right now we just need you to work, we can start pulling together, is that employee A was on front loader A, employee B was on dump truck A, things like that. So we see the operator for 8 hours and the equipment for 8 hours. And then we can get the FEMA equipment rates to give you a value for that equipment. Rental equipment. If you had to go out and rent a piece of equipment that you don't have in your yard, that's fine. We do not use the FEMA equipment rates on rental. You had a rental charge. You went out and rented it for 4 days to make emergency repairs to the road. Maybe you're going to be contracting out the permanent repairs, but to get that road that was washed out, you went out and rented a piece of equipment, a loader, to make the repairs. So you'll have your rental costs for those 4 days and the fuel, along with needing to know who operated it. Was it you, or was that part of a contract? You rented the equipment, but a contractor provided the driver, the operator. Then you have the materials you've used, whether this is going to be materials for work completed. To fix that washout road, you had a big pile of 2A modified in the yard. You went in, it took 4 loads of that material to put into that washout to get that road temporarily repaired so you can get it back open for your emergency vehicles and the residents. Maybe you still have permanent restoration to do, that's fine. But that material you used, you'll cost that out at its replacement cost. What does it cost to replace those 4 loads that you used? That'll what you'll be bringing forward to us. And then obviously if you have work to be completed, you're replacing a pipe, things like that, other materials, guide rail, whatever it may be for your damaged facility, those materials that you're going to buy and use yourself will then be brought forward at their cost. That's it on eligibility. Pretty straightforward and easy. You have the slides. You'll have the contact persons here at the end if you haven't already skipped forward in the slides of who has which county. So let's see. Dauphin, you're going to have Russ, who you're used to working with, past events. In Delaware, you have Kevin McGowan, who you're also used to working with if you were in the COVID event. So they're your go-tos if you have any questions after this that we don't ask during the brief. So we talked about the RPA and its deadline. That's your first required administrative form that everybody's got to work on here in Dauphin and Delaware, getting it in by November 19th. The other 3 forms that are required for this grant are Fema, Pennsylvania forms, the DAP1, DAP2, and bank account information. It's on the next slide on the bank account. If your DAP1 is, if you're a municipality, you're required and by resolution to appoint this point of contact, this person that has the authority to speak for and sign documents for your entity. Other types of institutions, the authorities, school districts, private nonprofits, typically your president, director, superintendent, has that authority already to designate that person that has signature authority for them. They're going to be our one point of contact, our go-to person. That agent can be somebody different, can be the same as who you put in as your primary or alternate contact on the request for public assistance. Typically, that's going to be, a lot of times we'll see on the RPA is that person who we're going to be working with day to day, either the secretary and or the roadmaster, your facilities person. They're going to be the ones actually working in the portal, pulling together all the documents needed for work completed, work to be completed, doing tours with us, where the agent then is that person in the governing body. So once that person is designated, now these are forms, we had to do a revision. We looked yesterday before we sent them out to all the counties to distribute down. We noticed that our online, they're available at our website, but we noticed the sample needed to be revised for the DAP2. The DAP2, which is basically our grant agreement, the agreement for financial assistance, the legal contract. If you were with us in past old declarations, this was the form where the agent had once they signed this document and it was witnessed, we needed that original inked page from this document. So that caused all applicants to have to mail us the signature page, the DAP1, and the bank account information to us, because mailing is the only way to get us an original signature, a wet page signature. We've entered the 21st century. We now do electronically sign DAP2 documents. You can still sign it hard if you wish and send us a copy, that's fine, but they're available as a fillable PDF. Again, they're on our website. We're in the midst of changing the example page, because the example page talks on the signature page of needing the original inked signature. So that's no longer accurate. We noticed yesterday, so in the process of redoing that example, we'll have it up shortly, and once we have that done also, we'll be packaging up the DAP1 and bank account, sending them all out to the counties for them to distribute down to their contact lists for those people reporting damages and participating in this program. Bank account verification form, self-explanatory. Who you are, your bank account information, SAP vendor number. We don't write checks. We don't put, check isn't going to be in the mail to you. We do electronic transfers. Once we have the money available to us from Fema, which we'll talk about that process in a little bit, for your project, we'll generate an invoice from here to the Commonwealth comptrollers, and once they receive that invoice, they're paying within 10 to 12 business days, so it goes pretty quick. But as the top header says, without the DAP, obviously without an RPA, because you're not going to have a project without an RPA, but past that, without these three forms, the DAP1, the DAP2, and the bank account verification form, we don't have them properly completed by you and turned into us, we cannot pay you from your projects that FEMA fronts us the money. We cannot pay you, transfer those funds to your account. So it's kind of self-explanatory. If you have not turned into your grant agreement and turned in your bank account verification with that numbers, we don't know where to send the transfer to. If you're with us in COVID or past declarations, I said that I will have applicants that will work through the process, RPA, projects, meetings, get the projects approved, funded by FEMA. FEMA will have the funds available to us to transfer you, but I will not have these forms from applicants. And we had about a dozen of them. I mentioned it in COVID in the briefings that it was going to happen, and it did. We had about 12 applicants, a couple of them with very substantial 6-digit figures of funds hitting here for them, and it still took us a lot of hand-holding and back-and-forth contacts trying to get these simple forms for them. So they're exclusive of the RPA. Again, different names, different time frames. RPA has a shorter time frame. We understand because of your public meetings for municipalities, we've missed the October meeting dates. We're looking forward to hopefully that you can make the November meeting to designate those agents. Debris removal. So your debris was either out in the creek, jamming up the culvert, jamming up the bridge. Once that jammed up and the waters came up, it deposited a bunch of crud on your roads. So now you got bridge, waterway debris, you've got road debris. Or in many cases, where I talked to, you put out dumpsters in the neighborhood as a municipality. And those flooded neighborhoods generated a lot of flood debris from the residents. So you contracted out with a contractor, waste treatment facility to put dumpsters out. And or those same residents with the flood debris took that debris out of the basements, the sheetrock and all that from the first floor that they had to cut off at 4 foot. It got wet. They moved all that to the curb. And once it was at the curb, it's in the public right-of-way. It now becomes a safety hazard. And as a municipality, you are responsible for the safety of your residents. So you took responsibility for getting rid of that debris, flood debris that was now in the public right-of-way, creating a safety concern. Any other types of debris, we'll be glad to talk to you about. Those are mainly it, what you're going to be bringing forward. Dumpsters pickup, we need to know it was monitored, that only flood-related debris, that we didn't do late summer, early fall cleaning. Quantities. You have your load tickets from the dumps. Things like that. If you're pulling out debris, how many truckloads of debris from under the bridge did you pull out off the roads? Where did it come from? Where was it taken? Some of it, dumpsters and roadside stuff, was probably taken to the dump, transfer station. You got your load tickets to show it, and the costs, the contract costs, or used in-house labor or contractors to clear the woody debris, and then what happened to that woody, stone, muddy debris that you took? Where did you take it to? And any permits that were required if you had to get into the waterway. Again, on the stream debris generated by the event, maybe you took out 50 loads of stream debris, but some of it was there beforehand. but it made sense now that you had more and it clogged everything up, you got rid of everything. That's fine, but you're going to have to be able to tell us that, hey, yeah, we took out 50 loads, but only 25 of it, 30 of it were storm related. Permitting, if you have that obstruction in the waterway, that bridge or culvert that always has water running through it. When you built it, you got a permit from DEP to do it. That same permit permits you to maintain the water opening, that opening of the structure that you built. So you have a right-of-way 50 feet upstream of that structure, through the structure, and 50 foot downstream of that structure to maintain that base elevation that was there when it went in. Going outside that 50 foot, you're probably going to need a permit. Within the 50 foot, you've got the permit, and that's going to be what FEMA looks at as eligible area. Going outside of that footprint, going to need another permit most likely from DEP, something you want to do prior to the event. I keep bringing this up because in every event we have applicants that did not get permits, whether it's replacing a culvert pipe, so that means they didn't do a hydrology, or they had equipment in the creek and didn't have a permit for it. And come funding time and FEMA projects, when we want to see the permits, FEMA wants to see the permits and you need to upload them, they have no permit. So they're having to go to DEP for a permit after the fact. And if you ever tried that before with DEP, it's not going to happen too fast, if at all. So that could jeopardize some funding. So that's why you see another reoccurring theme of today is proper permitting. So you're outside the 50 foot. We saw that a lot. I've talked to a few of you when we're out. The gravel bar extended up, the new gravel bar. Hey, you had a nice clean creek before the event, but now you got a 70-foot gravel bar deposited. And if you don't get rid of that whole gravel bar, it's just going to wash down into your pipe and clog it up again. So we can get rid of it. A lot of cases it was root balls. You had a tree upstream 70 feet from your bridge. Big root bar from the sycamore. If you don't get rid of it, next high water, that ball is going to come down and smash into the bridge or your culvert. Not a good thing. So again, pictures articulating the emergency of what you're doing, the need to protect your property, and we can make those types of things eligible too. Some more on trees, limbs, and stumps for your reference. Now we're getting into the meat of it, getting into how are we going to get you money? What is it going to take? So we got the documents, we've determined your eligibility. Check, check, check. Got the, going to get the RPA in. Then we're going to work with you. You're going to work with us. Your designee is going to actively work with us to develop your projects. Old days they were called project worksheets. Now they're called in grants portal is a project application. Project application or project worksheet. It's that document that's going to describe by work, by category. This is where FEMA will work with you to put it into the right category of what broke, what got clogged up, what work happened, what did IDA do, what did it damage, what did it destroy, what did it clog up that required you to do work, have extra costs. So it's going to describe that. What happened, where, when, where, and then, most importantly, what is it going to take to repair it or replace it? That's as we talked earlier when we talked about scope of work. That is going to be detailed. You are going to assist FEMA and FEMA to ensure that that project scope of work that details the pieces of the puzzle required to return that facility to pre-event condition is correct on that. As I said earlier, the work you do is going to generate then what your costs are. So the eligible work described within the project worksheet, project application, will then generate set what your costs will be. Scope of work will be a reoccurring thing. A little bit more on it for your reference, things that will be described and all in it. Big thing highlighted for you is the changes. Once you, PEMA, and FEMA have all agreed on for that project worksheet, and you may have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 project worksheets. All depends on the type of work you're going to be doing. One for your debris removal, one for your roads and bridges. Maybe you've got a lot of roads and bridges, so we're going to break them up into separate projects under Category C. You had some building and equipment damage, so that'll be a Category E project for you. And you as the municipality or the county have a rail trail which was damaged or washed out, things like that. That would be a Category G. So you could have multiple project worksheets that'll be written together, worked on within the portal, documents, descriptions, things like that you'll be supplying. But once it is, you guys have agreed on it, all 3 of us do approvals in the portal, where you're actually checking a box, signing off on it. Once that is done by everybody, and it's set in stone. It can be changed, but only by written approval, which means after discussions with FEMA and us, your PEMA project. So again, keeping in contact with your PEMA, and we'll talk about here in a few slides where we typically see those changes happen. Sometimes you're not aware of, but if you're thinking about it, simple way is if you're contracting it out, the work, you've got that scope of work you've given the contractor or your engineer, they're using it for the bid specs for the contractor starts work, and if he comes to you with a change order, like most contracts have, you get a change order request from a contractor, that's a red flag that you're going to need to talk with either Kevin or Russ about this and see if is it applicable, is it eligible, and then get those approvals in writing. All right, touched on basically the scope of work is gospel. Again, while your active participation, why it's so important to pay attention to that. You may have your engineer involved. If you already got an engineer involved and working on the design and specifications for that structure that's being replaced or repaired, you want to make sure they're coming to the meetings with you. Their time is billable. It's for the project, not an issue. But you want to make sure that anything down the road, the engineer is not changing on that scope. We have seen that before, where they change it with the contractor unbeknownst to you until the end when we say, you didn't have sidewalks on that bridge. Why is there sidewalks and nice decorative lighting? Oh, the engineers stuck them on. They said they were a requirement. Not a requirement. Probably something we're not going to pay for. Again, things we can talk about here in a little bit. So every cost FEMA looks at when we put it through the wash is it reasonable and necessary to that scope of work? Again, that scope of work is going to drive the costs. Contracting out, you're going to make sure you're following your normal procurement. Had a few questions already before the briefings and from other briefings about local emergency declaration. I had a local emergency declaration that resolves me of having to file proper procurement to replace the bridge. Okay, have you replaced it yet? No, we're still working on it. Okay, well, your local disaster declaration probably has expired, and also being permanent work is probably not covered under the emergency need of emergency proclamation once it's outside of those realms. So again, again, things to have a conversation. You have documents on procurement and there to consult. Other topics come up, second to last bullet. This is a federal declaration, but Davis-Bacon does not apply to this, being a federal reimbursement. Davis-Bacon does not apply. State prevailing may. Applicants have come back and asked, okay, I need something in writing show my engineer that he doesn't have to spec it as Davis-Bacon. Print this slide off, hand it to him. Or they can get a hold of your Fema or myself, and we can give them the citation out of the policy manual. But in all cases, giving them this slide or an email from us would suffice. So you've got an engineer. Maybe you already had them on retainer for the year. You already properly bid it out. You got an eligible engineer. Fine. Or you're getting one for this one. Again, whether or not you have to bid that out for procurement depends on your standard. But their work for design, spec, construction supervision, final inspection, as said in the bottom document, bottom bullet, are all eligible for eligible work for an eligible structure. And please have your engineer track and report to you their costs by these three subsets of the last bullet. That's how they normally track their costs. They're well aware of that, and it won't be an issue with them. Because in your project, that's how we need it broken down for eligibility and to check costs. Ineligible work. Things, again, we'll talk about a few of these now and later on, get into them different details later on. But as I said earlier, the program puts the facility back to its pre-event condition, function, and use, right out of Fema's manual. So what we can't do is so the good example is a one-lane bridge that you had destroyed in the event. You're going to replace it. And you're thinking because of future needs, or maybe there's a housing development going in, you already knew this was going to be an issue, you're going to put a two-lane bridge in. You can do that, but we can only participate in the cost of a one-lane bridge. So we're going to have to do some costing out on it. Again, something, if this is what you're going to be into or finding you're already into, take heed. And again, conversations with us at your meeting. Some other things listed here as things we can't do, pay for. Again, for your reference, bring it to the meeting. So we're going to get your project written. After you're in, we'll have your different project worksheets, project applications, and the costs will be determined by the work involved. Then you'll have, for that project worksheet, project application, it'll have a final eligible amount. So based on these dollar amounts listed, FEMA then will categorize it as either a small project or a large project. All projects are important to us. We understand that. But having this is like categories of work. This is a category of a project. And it drives how fast we can get you money and the documents required at the end. Once all your work is done, all your bills are paid, and we need to work on grant closeout, which we'll talk about here later, what amount of documents you're going to need to turn in to support your costs. So we do have to check that all work was done, all your bills were paid for that work at the end. So on the small projects, again, starting at the 3,320 up to the 130, well, it's 131,799.99 are considered small. Means less paperwork at the end and getting you funds quicker at the beginning. Things that close out, we're talking here in the second bullet, will be items you'll get into more detail with either Kevin or Russ. Once all your work's completed, your bills are paid, and we're looking to settle up with you. But with small projects, I can get you, after your project is in and approved, which you get to see all that happening in the portal. Once it's been approved and the funds are made available to the Commonwealth for small projects, we will get you the federal share, 75% of that particular project worksheet, project application. We will get that out to you, as the rules say, as soon as possible. In our world, is within 2 to 3 weeks. We'll get the notice from Fema eventually. You'll see it approved when your project has been approved in the portal. It then takes Fema a few more days to actually obligate the funds. Once they're obligated, then there is a document that needs to come to us detailing it. That takes a few more days to get to us. Once we have those documents, then we can invoice the comptroller for 75% of that small project application. We get you the federal share right away, the state share, the 25% we hold until the project is completed. All your work is paid, all your work is completed, and all your bills are paid. So yes, that means be into the project, you will be responsible for initially for the 25% at the end, but we'll get you that 25% or whatever is needed to make you whole. So what does that mean? So you have that $100,000 small project. It's written on an estimate because it's work to be completed. If it's work completed, then we'll write that project at actual cost. So there's going to be no pluses and minuses needed at the end. And we're going to write it just like we did in COVID on your actual cost incurred. So you have work to be completed. You haven't done that pipe removal yet. You still have roads to finish repairing. We'll write those projects based on estimates, whether it's one your engineer comes up with or ones that we'll use the estimating cost codes to do for you. But it'll come up, and to repair that one-lane bridge is $100,000. So that means we're going to get you 75% of it, $75,000, out to you as soon as possible after it's funded by Fema. And you go out and you do the work on that $100,000 project, and it only costs you $80,000 to complete the work. You don't need 25% of 100 to make you whole. You only need 5%. You only need $5,000 to make you whole. That's why we hold off on the state share on all our projects to the end. And we'll use that to get the final documents in from you, the paperwork that we may or may not need, because a lot of paperwork you're going to be putting into the portal, so it's already there from the start for us to use, or there may be other things that we need. So let's take that $100,000 a little step further then. So it's written for 100. We transfer you the federal share, 75%, $75,000. You go out and do the work, and it only costs you $70,000 to do it. That $5,000 of the feds you can keep. You're going to talk with Russ or Kevin on what eligible happens every now and then. It's rare, but it happens. What you can use that extra $5 for. Mainly things to do things better for your facility. Maybe buy some more riprap. Do something to make things better. Can't go towards expenses or payroll. And obviously, you don't need any federal state share on that. You've already, it's okay under the federal, not okay under us. We can support you if you make any money on the federal funds under small projects, as long as all your work was completed, all your bills were paid, Where it'll come up on an issue with you first is going to be with your auditor. If you're subject to a single audit this year or next, they see you've made money, that's going to be an issue for them. I'm able to support through the regulations and the policies of the program of if you happen to make any on the federal side, where that $100,000, we gave you 75 and lo and behold, it only cost you 70, what about that 5? I can support that for you with your auditor, but we're not going to support you making any on the Commonwealth. FEMA just doesn't have the mechanism for that amount to take back. They just as soon it go towards something useful on your projects. So that's smalls. So now we're talking about large projects. They're a little different. Paperwork is a lot more involved at the end. Depending on when you get the work done, there may be some quarterly project reports, but you're funding. So that project is going to go through the same way. And then depending on whether it's work completed or work to be completed, depends on how much we can get to you and how quickly. Obviously, if the work is completed already, great. We will get all the documents supporting that cost into your project. And then work on getting you the 75% as soon as possible out to you. And then you'll work with your Kevin or Russ on the other documents needed to get that other 25%. If you have the large project, replacing that one-lane bridge and it's going to be $200,000, as you incur costs, once that project is in, approved, and funded, which you will get a letter from us either on the smalls or the larges, once we have it and it's funded and we've invoiced you, you will get a letter from us telling you that hey, for this project, it has been approved, it has been funded, and we have invoiced you. On the large ones, where it's work to be completed, you'll just get the letter that it's been approved, it's funded, you can see the project in the portal. And here's the DAP-9 request for reimbursement form that you will use, and again, discussions with Russ and Kevin, to draw down funds on that project of work to be completed as you incur costs. So for that bridge you're replacing, probably your first cost is going to be the engineer, design, spec, and permitting. He's going to have to go to get a permit for DEP. He's going to have to do the hydrology report that's going to determine the opening. Many times we'll see that opening's too small, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit on those extra costs. But you'll work with your project specialist that as you incur costs on that project that you're working on still, you can draw. So as the contractor sends you an invoice, hey, you know, when you hit different milestones, he's going to invoice you. You can take that invoice, you turn it into us, we get you invoiced back that amount. And you can draw up to 75% of that project. All the other things required, project reports, closing out, again, we'll work with you on that when it gets to that point. Cost overruns, bid specs, you put it out to bid, you know, you have that project, well, for this one, it's approved, doesn't matter whether it's small, large, you put it out to bid, bid comes in more than 10% than the approved amount. That's another red flag to have a discussion with Kevin or Russ. On a large project, we're going to look at the scope of work, compare it to your bid specs, make sure that they are apples and apples. If they are, and it's just a matter of, hey, our lowest bid that we're accepting happens to be greater than 10% of the PW approved amount of this large project. We're then going to have a discussion, the three of us, with and FEMA being the third, agree that bid specs were scope of work were filed for the bid specs, and it's just a fact of life. cost of doing business, that the lowest bid came in higher than the project. Those are the cases. We can then work on getting those extra funds approved for you so they're there for you to draw upon as you complete work. Small projects, we're going to worry about at the end if you have the over. Again, watching the scope of work, all your work is completed correctly. So you may have 5 projects. As we have found in the past, one project may come in high, one project may come in low. And then we can do the pluses and minuses between those 5 projects you have to see then at the end, where are you? But again, conversations with your Fema project officer. Little more on funding. Second, third bullet are the newest things to the program from Fema. Advancement of funds. The only place where I foresee where we will advance you funds, which would be the federal share, is under your small projects where the project was written on work to be completed. So you have, if we are writing projects for you on work completed, we're not advancing you funds, we are reimbursing you. On your large projects, you're drawing down as you go on an incurred cost, so it's not an advancement. The only place advancement really comes into play, and I've had lots of discussions trying to determine the common senseness of this with Fema, but it's part of CFR 200, so we have to live with it. So under a small project written for work to be completed, we're still going to advance you those federal funds, that 75%, as I'm required to do as soon as possible. Those funds have to be deposited into an interest-bearing account. And if for some reason you're able to incur more than $500 in interest until all your work is completed and your bills paid, if you get over $500 in interest on that advanced funds, that amount needs to be returned to Fema. As I've said in the other ones, and I still haven't done it, I have no idea what dollar amount that needs to be deposited over the short time it's going to take you to complete the work, that you would be able to receive more than $500 in interest. But like I said, common sense test did not apply, part of CFR 200, really not, you know, it's for all federal grants. So it really doesn't apply to this program, but it's a federal grant on advanced funds, so it does come into play with us watching. It is another, you know, most of us don't have the interest bearing from the municipality level, something that, again, you're going to have to work with. Oh, last bullet. We keep talking about you've completed the scope of work. Because at the end, and it happens now and then, we find an applicant for one reason or another, something within that scope of work for one of their projects they did not complete. We've seen it with debris removal, not completed. We saw it in the assessment, it's there now. We write a project for you to remove that debris, and in the next storm, removes that debris for you. There's nothing there for you to remove, so you have no costs. So those funds have to be returned to us. For work not completed, funding must, if we have paid you up front, like the small projects, then those funds have to be returned to us. So if you remember back in the categories of work, we talked about that Cat Z management cost. This grant program allows an administrative management cost for you. So you're going to be keeping a spreadsheet of who did what, when, where, and why administratively managing this grant, or your many grants you may have. How much is available to you is going to be determined on 5% of your PW value. So if you have those 5 projects, we're going to add up the value of those 5 projects, and you have up to 5% of that value. to be used towards your management costs. It's something we'll get into at the end. You will track on your spreadsheet throughout the process. We'll discuss it with you at your meeting. Again, some information here for your reference. The things you'll track. So on that spreadsheet, your first entry is going to be today. That you attended this applicant's briefing for an hour and a half on this date and time at this rate. So if you are a paid employee, your municipality, your municipality, organization, whatever, you can charge, I'm guessing you all are on straight time right now. You can charge that time for attending this briefing. Surprise! And any other meetings. So we're going to talk about them here in a few slides. So all these meetings you're going to attend, phone calls, work you're doing in-house to compile documents, pull stuff together, put into piles, work completed, piles of work to be completed, types of work, all that will go on this spreadsheet. What's not going to go on it is if you're also the roadmaster and you're out in the dump truck doing work at a site. Those costs go onto the project. This is just to administer the overall program. Every project is going to have special considerations questionnaire. Going to touch on all these things. Again, you'll get into with your Fema and Fema people down the road. But start, again, thinking about it, historic, is it a over 50-year-old structure? Historic significance, is that going to make a difference on how you make your repairs? Maybe it was destroyed. So does it really have to go back historic if there is no longer any historic significance? All of these things. Insurance, all applicants will be uploading their insurance policies into the portal for FEMA to look at. And we'll talk about that here in a couple of slides. Endangered Species Act, updated link, find out about bog turtles and snail darters and how they might affect your project. Mitigation. So we talked that, hey, putting that facility, putting that one-lane bridge back to the way it was, we have to put it back the way it was, one-lane bridge. And next few slides, we're going to talk, we talked about that. We can't pay for that second lane, but we can do things to the site that maybe will prevent it from happening in the future. Next slide has a couple of examples, but to harden the site, to mitigate future damages. Again, something to think about, something to bring to the table. It's a very important subject for FEMA. They will be discussing it with you during your first meetings throughout the process of what can we do. Can we add a few extra dollars so we're not changing it from that Volkswagen facility you have? We're not giving you a Cadillac, but we're just figuring, can we put some new bumpers on that Volkswagen to keep it from getting banged up in the future? Some examples, that 18-inch cross pipe you have on your road. It's there to convey rainwater from one side of the road to the other. It's not raining, it's dry, so it's just a cross pipe. It's not in this program. We don't consider that a culvert. Culverts are in the creek, always have a minimum base flow. Cross pipe just conveys rainwater. So 18-inch, past events, it has even declared, non-declared. 2018, it clogged up, tore up the road. Did the same thing this time, clogged up, water ran over the road, tore it up. Maybe we want to upsize it one. Under mitigation, if you still have to repair that pipe or replace it, we can put a upsize one size for your cross pipes. You've already done it, had an 18-inch pipe, you've already replaced it with an 18-inch pipe, covered it over, we cannot tear that thing out and put into 24 and pay for it. Riprap. around that, replacing that one-lane bridge, it got blown out because it didn't have riprap in front of the wing walls. You know, water washed out the embankment, got behind the wing walls, took out the abutments, and dropped the deck. So we're putting it back, and we're going to add riprap in front of the wing walls to protect it for the next time. Things to think about, you know, where sewer authorities take responsibility for sewer back up into people's basements. Maybe we want to look at check valves, where pipes have come up into your own buildings, backed up into your basements of your facilities, things like that. Things to think about, things to bring to your meeting. So insurance. Any insurable structure, walls and roof, equipment, any insurance you have has to be accounted for. Like I said, all applicants are going to be uploading their policy. Could be a regular policy. If you had a flood insurance policy, riders, secondary market, all those you're going to be uploading to the portal for FEMA's insurance specialists to confirm that you have no available insurance. Got a regular insurance policy, you didn't have any flood insurance at all, then you probably didn't have any coverage at all. And we want to just confirm that with FEMA's insurance specialist needs to confirm that. But we have seen in a lot of cases where you have a flood insurance, and you were denied, or you do not get full value that you should have. In many cases, FEMA's insurance specialist has been able to point that out to your carrier that they have shorted you. And lo and behold, oh, yeah, that was a mistake. Yeah, we'll get that taken care of right away. So we're going to need, and if you did have insurance, flood insurance, or any coverages, we're also going to need that statement of loss. So if you've already put in for your insurance, you have that statement of loss, we're going to need a copy of that uploaded to the portal also. So you had a structure, insurable structure, you had equipment that was damaged, destroyed, that was by the floodwaters, and you did not have insurance on it. As long as it wasn't in the flood zone, special flood hazard area, FEMA will pay for the repairs, replacement of that structure and equipment. They will, if it's greater than $5,000, as the second bullet has, require you to go out and get flood insurance for the next time. Talking with many of you already, you're already working on getting flood insurance for the next time. As we saw this time, in these last storms, many of our residents were flooded, and our buildings, municipal buildings, were flooded that are nowhere near a flood zone. The excessive overland floodwaters from these heavy deluges are flooding areas that are not in the flood zone. You, like your residents may have been told, you don't need it. You're not in the flood zone, you don't need flood insurance. You're not in the flood zone, you can't get flood insurance. Those are all false statements. Anybody, your residents or yourself, can get flood insurance for the structure, for their contents. Two separate policies through the NFIP. Your local agent has to write them, and that's where we find a lot of the issues is, especially when you're out of the flood zone, there's not a whole lot of incentive because there's not a whole lot of money there for them for writing that policy. They're all pretty cheap when you're out of the flood zone, depending on the amount of insurance you're getting. So we find that happens a lot. We've heard that a lot past storms and in this one, as you have. So one of those messages you can help us put out as you're talking to residents, messaging residents, having any meetings, is you can get flood insurance. Very difficult time is what is the correct time to have that conversation with residents. Walking out, I was out on the damage assessments for the individual residents and businesses at the start with the other teams. So it's, heard it lots of times. No, I didn't have flood insurance. I've lived here 40, 60 years, never needed it. Told I couldn't get it. Told, I didn't need it. Didn't think it's, what is that good time? There's never a good time to have that conversation, especially right there during the assessment. But it's information we want out there for the residents and for yourself that they can get flood insurance. There is going to be even if they've been flooded now, they can still get it. There is a hold period of 30 to 45 days till it takes effect. So the sooner they get it, the better. And we're working with the insurance companies and banks. Banks may have that flood insurance policy. They may drop it after 80% value. They'll tell the homeowners, oh, you don't need your flood insurance policy anymore. You're 80% value. And they go and lo and behold and drop it. There was a property 5, 6 years ago here in Dauphin County where that town hall meeting we did up in that gentleman's garage, that was the exact thing. That gentleman's garage we were standing in, he had been told 2 weeks earlier by his mortgage company that he no longer needed flood insurance for his policy. He dropped it. 2 weeks later, his house was majorly damaged. So we see that time again, getting that information out will help. All right, off my soapbox, back to the program. That was a commercial break, by the way. If you are in the flood zone, if you have a facility in the flood zone, equipment in the flood zone that was damaged, and you did not have flood insurance for that, FEMA will treat you as if you did have, because you should have had flood insurance for structure equipment in the flood zone. Again, we'll get into the particulars of it with you, but either way, with flood insurance, if you are fully covered by your insurance, you may have then a deductible. That deductible is eligible for FEMA's reimbursement. That may be all you get out of the project. We're going to detail the damages, we're going to detail your insurance coverage, and the bottom line left eligible for you is that deductible. So other types of projects we can get into using that one-lane bridge that was destroyed. As we said, we can't pay for that second lane, but you are going to. You're willing to put up the cost, prorated cost of that second lane to the bridge. Makes sense to do it now that we're replacing it. Wasn't historic, not an issue. So we're going to do it. Again, bring to the meeting. That is what we call in the program a improved project. That needs specific approval from FEMA, needs specifically written into your project worksheet, project application, that you are doing a improved project. And it'll detail the one-lane bridge and all its pieces of the puzzle to put it back, and then what also is going to be your responsibility. There's going to be permitting involved, changing the footprint. You're going to have to do more environmental studies. You're going to have to do more historic studies, changing that footprint. All those things need to be detailed in your project application. If after the project is in and approved, you can still do that. You need to, prior to works to commencing, you need to come back to us, to Russ or Kevin, and discuss with them, because we have to do a request for an improved project then with FEMA. Again, you're changing the scope of work, you're doing something bigger and better. Again, things to think about, things to bring to the meeting. So that same one-lane bridge that's been destroyed, thank God for Mother Nature. Very few people needed it. Wasn't
was already in disrepair. It was still open. It was still functional, but it was getting kind of old, starting to make you wonder about it. And now Mother Nature has taken care of it for you. Do you need to replace it? No. Nope. Under the alternate project policy, you can decide not to replace that bridge. Your neighbor municipality downstream's got a nice 2-lane bridge. PennDOT upstream's got a better 4-lane bridge. Everybody uses them. They're kind of shying away from this 1-lane bridge. It's narrow. It's got dog legs into it to get to it. That hump it was an issue. And now it's gone. So we're not going to replace it. You're going to make it safe and secure. If the deck is still in the creek, we got to get it out. But you are still going to work with us to decide on that scope of work required to replace the bridge. That scope of work will then come up with a dollar amount to replace that bridge. And on the alternate projects, then, you can then take that amount of funds needed to replace that bridge and go do something else within your community that betters it. Some examples here is, again, conversations to have with us, with Kevin or Russ, things we have done in the past, go with it. The last one, repairing the municipal roof. We also added air conditioning at the same time. Made the borough secretary very, very happy that she now had a roof that didn't leak. She didn't have to worry about changing out the pans, and it added air conditioning. But some other things. It can't go towards expenses. It cannot go towards payroll. Things to talk about with us at the meeting. Again, obviously need to decide all this prior to you starting the repair or replacement. Okay, a couple slides on codes and standards. Must apply, uniformly enforce prior to the disaster. One that comes up most times on this one is PennDOT's design manual. May have had PennDOT out helping you do your assessment, and they might have been talking about following the design manual. We all know you have to do that, follow that design manual when you're using liquid fuels. This isn't using liquid fuels, so we're not using the PennDOT design manual unless you have already adopted prior to IDA that is how you always do your roads. Something you'll discuss with us at the meeting. But it had to be in force, adopted prior to the event. And you're going to be talking to us about that code and standards, because Fema now has, this is the first time it's happened, we've come in it, it's happened in the last couple of years, they've come out with this consensus-based codes and standards. As the first bullet said, it is your responsibility, probably with the help of your engineer, to come up with all applicable codes and specifications and standards required to repair or replace your facility. So if you've adopted that design manual, great. Now you bring that forward. The other one you're going to bring forward, if you're replacing that culvert pipe in the creek or a bridge, and you have to do the hydrology. You have to do that report for DEP that shows what is the minimum opening required for that facility. And any others that apply. What is good about that, going back to projects and when we can make things bigger and better, I forgot about this one. So you have that culvert, that 1-lane bridge, and you go to do your hydrology report, and we see this many times here in Pennsylvania. That hydrology report shows that the pipe you had in, that 48-inch squash pipe, was undersized according to your hydrology report. Takes into the watershed, the 100-year, 50-year flood. Again, it's a software package the engineers use, already familiar with it, but if that report comes out that facility was undersized, FEMA will pay to meet that minimum opening according to the hydrology report. Again, we'll get into that. One of those ones you need to bring forward. Things we'll get into discussions again at the meeting, especially if you have pipes blown out, bridges damaged where you're replacing them. No hydrology involved in a cross pipe. Got to have a base flow. Cross pipes that convey rainwater from one side to the other, they're only conveying rainwater. There's no base flow. They're not subject to hydrology. Some more on the consensus based. You have some documents on this with the attachments that the county sent out earlier. Procurement, we talked a couple of times on already, so we'll just lay this slide for your reference. You have it. If you need more information other than we already supplied, you can web search, Google FEMA PDAT, and get more on procurement under CFR 200. But again, making sure, most part, if you're following your normal procurement under Pennsylvania code, you're going to be okay. About the only caveat we have seen in our research and use and talking to municipalities and FEMA is under the federal procurement guidelines, there is a requirement that in your bid advertising, you are focusing on encouraging minority and or women-owned businesses to apply that may have the ability to apply for what you're bidding out for the contracted services. That's about really the only addition that we have seen through this process in previous disasters. Grant closeout, slide for your reference, something you'll work with either Kevin or Russ on. All projects have to be accounted for, that the work was completed, all your bills were paid. Whether they're small or large, we want to get settled up with you, make those final disbursements or collect back if we should have to, hopefully not. Must be done, again, with those, remember you have the 6 months for your debris and emergency work, and for your permanent, you have 18 months. The dates are back in the slides. Again, something your FEMA folks will discuss with you on what is needed specifically for that project. As we go through the process, again, active participation, open communications, clear understanding of the programs and policies, but every now and then we agree to disagree with a FEMA decision. It's rare that that happens, but every now and then it happens. If you, the applicant, and us as your advocate decide that we disagree with a FEMA decision on something, you have the ability to appeal those decisions. We will work with you on that appeal when needed. Getting towards the end of the presentation, we'll soon be talking about the portal at FEMA Online. There it is. That's it for the program. Again, high level, more to come. You've been with us before, you know, you have the support here. Russ and Kevin, your go-to. You'll be slide here about your FEMA folks being assigned. So you know you got plenty of support, especially if you're new. Don't worry. Don't worry, we're from the government. We're here to help. Okay, so FEMA's Grants Portal. It's an online system. Remember the old days, Irene and Lee, prior to that maybe, you had a lot of FEMA project specialists. They lived out in your hotels in your area. They may have set up shop in your borough office for a few days to work out of it, to sit down and write those project worksheets up with you. Or they don't do that anymore. Everything is done in the portal. A little bit more interaction with you, a little more requirements on you to put things in there. That is why they have that grants management administrative cost to help offset your costs and time for doing that. So it's an online. I don't foresee anybody in Dauphin or Delaware counties having issues with strong internet that's required for it. Must have internet access for the portal. We did have a couple of municipalities out in the central northern counties that had internet access with COVID doing projects where we had to send Fema out with hotspots to help them out through the process. But as long as you have good internet access and follow the slides that we have coming up, you'll be able to, especially if you're new, be able to get into the portal, establish your presence, your profile, submit the RPA, and as we have found from all others, they started this back in 2018. It was the first time we used the portal. Again, being old dogs, being taught new tricks here. We're a little apprehensive, but we're learning to like it as long as when it's working well. It is temperamental, so because of that, it works best with the use of Google Chrome. Using Google Chrome as your browser for the portal link, which we get in the next slide, is the best. It will work fine with Firefox and Edge being new. It will not work well at all under Internet Explorer. If Internet Explorer is still your default browser, ensure that you put this web address under the second bullet into your Google Chrome, Firefox, or Edge browser to access the grants portal. If you were with us during COVID for it, then you probably already have a desktop icon. But everybody, all applicants have to be in here. This is where the RPA is stored that you'll fill in, where you're going to upload documents, where you're going to see the project as it is. You know, you're going to upload the pieces of your puzzle. FEMA's going to put that puzzle together and give it back to you to see in the portal. You're going to take a look at that puzzle, which is your project application, project worksheet. You're going to look on the damage descriptions. You're going to look at the scope of work. You're going to agree with all of those pieces before your approval. And if you don't have one, next few slides are going to be on how to get in following this website link. A lot of these I'm just going to cruise through because they're here for your reference, something hopefully you're not doing now. We don't want to see the little red icon exclamation point come up on the screen here that you've now clicked off of this program and are trying to get in to the portal. But if you've been in the portal, you know this page, your username, password. Go ahead and use your current and follow the process to the RPA, which we'll have here. If you're new, these slides are meant for you. You got some training video links here for you, and we got some text boxes. First-time users, click here. You know, I'm just going to click through these next few pages. Slowly, though, while I have a sip of coffee. These are all things, if you're new, establishing your profile, getting to the page for the RPA. Have to do the profile, you'll get your temporary, get your permanent username, password. Password, if you're new, 14 characters, upper, lower, special. Plan on please writing it down. 15 characters. So have a good acronym set up for it. If for some reason down the road you have forgotten it, get a hold of Kevin, Russ, and they can get you into the process for getting that reset for you. Again, all for the new folks. A lot of this stuff, you know, this previous one, primary contact, alternate, almost going to be the same as the RPA. You're establishing with who your primary alternate contact. It's going to be pretty much same information you're going to see again on your RPA. And you'll do the submit button at the bottom once everything's filled in. So for the new folks, you'll get to this page, it's going to ask about, do you wish to submit an RPA? For the new folks, it's going to be a no. Yeah, I know, doesn't make sense. But on clicking no, then we'll move you through the account to get there. Clicking yes will only show availability for COVID. It was a glitch we found at the beginning of the system. This is the workaround for it right now. If you already have an account, you won't run into this. You'll be able to find IDA on the drop-down. But for now, for those that are new, this is the workaround FEMA came up for us when we found out from an applicant who was doing it during the briefing, because he was able to ask that question at the end why he couldn't get in. So we got a workaround for now until they fix it. So once you're in, again, we talked briefly on this resource tab that's in there. Lots of information there for you. It's where the FEMA equipment rates. So if you have that in-house owned equipment, you need to find out how much is the mileage or hourly rate. Most time it's going to be by the hourly rate. The operator for 8 hours, equipment for 8 hours, that's in the FEMA equipment rates. You have the Applicants Grants Portal, User's Manual. Very lengthy part, gets into fine detail on Grants Portal, there for your use, and especially on those nights of insomnia. Go ahead, open up the portal, and probably not going to get past 2 or 3 pages before we have solved your insomnia. FEMA roles. So we talked about you have Kevin or Russ as your FEMA project specialist. Once your RPA is in and approved, you're going to be assigned a FEMA program delivery manager. Some of you had some during COVID. This is your FEMA customer service rep. They're going to be your FEMA point of contact for anything FEMA through the process. Your FEMA contact, though, is your go-to for all things. But your FEMA person will also be here to help out from the start of the process. We talked here your exploratory call and recovery scoping meeting. We're going to talk about those here in the next couple of slides. Getting near the end, so hold on here for me. They will be with you all the way up through the time of your projects are submitted, approved. If you have work to be completed, after your meeting with us, you'll get a site inspector call to set up an appointment. No cold calling, no FEMA people are just going to show up at your door unannounced without an appointment. They're going to set the appointment up with you to come out and tour the sites where you have work still to be completed. Some more on the program delivery manager here for you to read. Some terminology. Okay, so scope. Okay, so let's back up here one. Exploratory call. It could be a high level, not down in the weeds of your project, getting into all the nuts and bolts of it. They're going to give you a call within 7 days, typically, of your RPA being approved. They'll get assigned and give you a call. They're looking to see on the types of projects you're going to have. Big thing of this call is, do you have any special out of the ordinary projects you're going to be doing? Are you a wastewater treatment facility where the tanks floated up and are destroyed? are historic structures that were damaged or destroyed, things out of the ordinary they want to know about ahead of time. So for your recovery scoping meeting, your first real sit down with us, they have the right people at the table, the right people on the Zoom call to talk about your project. This recovery scoping meeting, as we say, used to be the old kickoff meeting where we came out and sat down with you. Right now we're doing them by Zoom calls. Someday, hopefully, we'll get back to the face-to-face, just like this used to be, this briefing. But your first sit down, we're going to go start getting into the weeds, looking at the type of work you have. Fema will start putting it into categories for you. But we really, and there's another slide on what to bring, is with this meeting, again, it'll be set up with you probably during the exploratory call. They'll work on setting up a time to have this scoping meeting with you, the kickoff. But more, for you, we'll be coming prepared to it on having that, we'll talk about it, damage inventory, descriptions of your damage. You should know by now all the types of damages you had, other costs you incurred because of Ida. So like we talked, you're putting into piles of, work completed, work to be completed. Hey, this is my debris stuff. This is my bridge stuff, my culvert stuff. This is my road surface. This is the park stuff. You're starting to put those in piles. That's the stuff you want to bring those piles with you to the meeting to talk about. Some more for the meeting and the requirements. Having the location, descriptions, dimensions if you have it for the work completed. If you don't, we'll do the site visits. Of importance is from the day you have this meeting, so keep this in mind when you're setting that date for the meeting, because you get to say whether you're available or not, when you can have this. Again, sooner you have this meeting, the better, because it gets the process going for you, especially if you have work completed. We can get you those funds identified, approved, obligated, transferred to you quicker than work to be completed. But from this meeting, you have 30 days to identify and complete, basically, is identifying your damages within the portal under the damage inventory. Basically describing all of your damages you had by Ida. Most likely you already know it by now, so this is going to be pretty simple. Start pulling it together so you can meet this 30-day deadline, because after 30 days from this call, this meeting, the portal automatically locks down your damage inventory. So you're not going to be able to add any more information. You can't, as applicants come back time to time, oh, I just found out a bridge that was damaged. Some terminologies that'll pop up through the process for your review, reference. Again, we talked about the damage inventory. Here's some pieces of it. All right, a few slides left. What we expect out of our applicants. Again, we said it was an interactive, so if you're already deciding, like I said at the beginning, that this is going to require too much of your time to do due to your position within your entity, and you're going to be delegating down to somebody after this meeting, and they're not on this meeting, please ensure they attend the next one and or see the briefing. This one's they're all being recorded. We're going to pick the best one for Dauphin and Delaware that we do out of the 3 and put that recording up on our website here in a few days. What can you expect from us? It's only fair. We have expectations. You should have some from us. And those are that Kevin and Russ are going to maintain contact with you. They're going to help resolve problems. They're going to work as your advocate.
They're the person to make sure all rules are applied. They're going to want to make sure that every penny you are owed under eligible work and costs are obligated for you. And FEMA is going to do the same. Some reviews. Here for your review reference, here are Russ's and Kevin's contact information, desk phone, and their email. Desk phone, if you give them a call, if they don't answer, you'll get their voicemail. Please leave a message for them. That message goes to as a media file to their Outlook, so they're able to listen to it. Please leave who you are, what municipality, entity, applicant, your county, and what disaster too would be nice that you're calling. In reference to Ida, this is Acme Township and Acme County. Got a question on my project pertaining to whatever, can you give me a call back? And they will do that. Or you can email them and or. Oh, we did put that. We just make sure it didn't go more than one. Okay, good. So here is our other contact information. If there's anything you need to mail to us, our 800 number. If you haven't been able to get a hold of Russ or Kevin, use the 800 number to our administrative assistant, and she'll get you to myself or someone else that's here to help you. Website. Disaster information, again, once you're on there, top right is a recovery tab. Click on that and follow the rest of the tabs, links that you need. And again, some required forms, reviews for your reference to go back to with the dates. Forms needing the applicant's agent's signature as you move through the process if they apply to you. Again, the timelines. Reoccurring things, communications, email. If you have a generic email address for your entity, please use that for us. As we said earlier, life happens through the life of this grant. People move on, change jobs for different reasons. When we have people select emails, it takes us a while once we're emailing folks for information, or FEMA is, or the portal, resources, account information, updates, requirements will be generated out of the portal to you, to your primary contact and alternate contact emails that there's work for you to be done or things have been uploaded to your account. Having that generic ensures that that communication line stays open. Public grant. Subject to Right to Know, Freedom of Information Act, and your own internal record retentions. Ours is 7 years at FEMA. I'm not sure yet on how long things will last other than forever within the portal. So if you have any questions that we have not answered for you during this presentation, or if you had it, Greg had them, maybe we'll take a look and see if there's any that are pertinent to all, if you haven't been monitoring the chat room through this. But give us a second here to switch over our computer to the chat room. Gives me a second to get another cup of coffee, take a breath, and then we'll see if there's any questions in there that we need to address. Were none during the event. So Greg just popped his head in, so we'll see if any pop up now. All right, well, people are signing off. We're not going to stick around. We had no questions during. We have no questions as of yet. Give you a second to see if you have one. That means the guys put together a good brief. Said you only need to do one of these. Thank you very much for attending. If you partake in the damage assessment process, reporting your damages to the county, thank you very much. Oh, we do have one that popped up.
Robert's question is the BAV form the same as the former PEP form?
Yes.
but it is now, they have changed it around a little bit. That comes to us from the comptroller's office. So we're now using the BAV.
And next question from Mark, just confirming a copy of this presentation will be available.
Yeah, we're recording it. We'll stick one up. You've got the slides there for reference, but yeah, we'll have a recording up for, so if you are delegating down or we get new people involved or you have other people you're going to get involved, they're going to be able to see it. And we'll message out to the counties once that's up on the website with the links so you're able to get it to it.
You're welcome, Mark. And no further questions.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. Stay in touch. Stay well. Be safe. Class dismissed and Harrisburg out.